So, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this Hampshire's. We're a special cabinet, I think, this morning.
Yes.
On Friday, the 18th of July. And I just need to read out the housekeeping statement for you. Thank you for attending this meeting of Cabinet. Whilst the meeting is open to the public, it is being recorded and broadcast live on the County Council's website and will be available for repeat viewing. It may also be recorded and filmed by the press and public. Filming or recording is only permitted in this room whilst the meeting is taking place, so must stop when the meeting is either adjourned or closed. Filming is not permitted elsewhere in the building at any time. If the filming of the meeting is paused for any reason while the meeting is still taking place, then an audio recording will be commenced in order to assist with minute taking and to resolve any lack of clarity. Audio recordings will not be broadcast. We're not expecting a fire drill, but in the event of a fire alarm, please vacate via the main reception or via one of the emergency exits across the hall. So on to business. We've got no apologies. We're all here. Declarations of interest. All members who believe they have a disclosable pecuniary interest in any matter to be considered at the meeting must declare that interest and, having regard to Part 3, Paragraph 1.5 of the County Council's Member Code of Conduct, leave the meeting while the matter is discussed, save for exercising any right to speak in accordance with paragraph 1.6 of the Code. Furthermore, all members with a personal interest in the matter being considered at the meeting should consider, having regard to Part 5, paragraph 4 of the Code, whether such interest should be declared, and having regard to Part 5, paragraph 5 of the Code, consider whether it is appropriate to leave the meeting while the matter is discussed, save for exercising any right to speak in accordance with the Code. Now, a number of us have a pecuniary interest. Well, we all have a pecuniary interest as county councillors, but we have a dispensation for that. A number of us have a pecuniary interest as members of district and borough councillors, but again, we have a dispensation as long as we declare that interest. So those of us who are should we just raise hands, those of us that are members of other councils? So Zoe and Kirsty, Jan, Liz, Steve and myself. Is that all good enough? Yeah, great, thanks. Chairman's announcements. I don't have any other announcement to say other than it really is the last meeting now.
It is. It's the last meeting last week.
We keep saying it's the last council meeting and it's the last one-to-one.
Everything.
I said a bit yesterday.
That was enough.
Sorry?
That was enough.
No, there's more to say.
No.
Carolyn has, I just wanted to say something personal, which is that obviously this is Carolyn's last day before your retirement, but you're not really retiring because you're becoming a ministerial envoy.
Yes.
To Warrington.
Wonderful.
Yes. Not as nice as Winchester, but it does become with W. And so we all have valued your support and your help, and I personally have very much, because as you know, it was something of a surprise when I became leader last year, and I could not have done it without all of your support and help. Thank you so much. And we wish you all the very best in portfolio retirement.
Yes.
So, but I'm sure you'll find lots of things to do. Making cream teas, scones.
Yes. Entertaining you for tea if you pop
entertaining for me for tea when I pop in, when I'm going home for the weekend. And I mean, you could start selling cream teas to the Grockles.
I may well.
That'd be fun. If you ever fall on hard times, there's always a good market around there for that.
Yes, as long as you look after my pension fund.
I'll do that. That's fine. Well, I won't, but Councillor Thacker will. So that's fine. Seriously, good luck. We wish you all the very best, and Mike. And have a safe trip on Tuesday when you finally head away from here.
Thank you.
So we have no deputations, and there are no non-executive members of the County Council present, although we have three of our committee chairs who are here to join in the conversation. You're welcome to join in as normal when we get to those different points. So we've got 3 items on the agenda. However, one of them we're not hearing this morning, and we're just delaying until the 8th of August. So the first item, which is item 5, is the Savings Programme to 2025 Phase 2 Consultation Review. Consultation Revenue Savings Proposals. and I just need to confirm that the law requires us to give 28 days notice for key decisions. And I'm afraid, due to administrative error, this had not happened in relation to the savings programme to 2025 Phase 2 Revenue Savings Proposals report, and this paper has therefore been deferred for Cabinet consideration on the 8th of August at another special Cabinet, just so we make sure we've got the 28 days. The SP25 report was published unamended on Thursday the 10th of June for the 8th of August meeting, together with the 28-day key decision notice. So that's all there, and we will just come back here and talk through that item then. And I know there are a couple of non-executive members who are hoping to speak on that item, so we look forward to working them at that point. So we're on to item 6, which is the English Devolution White Paper, Local Government Reorganisation Update. We had a very long debate about this in Council yesterday. Carolyn would like to say a few words first, and then we'll hand over to Gary to...
Okay. Colleagues, thank you. As you know, you have a professional officer report for you to consider and make a decision upon today. It contains clear recommendations based upon evidence and data. This work is underpinned by a shared data set from and available to all of the 15 local authorities across Hampshire and the Solent area. And we have also been working very closely with our East Hampshire District Council colleagues in compiling this report. And also there has been work ongoing across all local authorities, including the districts, boroughs and unitary councils. We have sought support from PwC on the business case, from Newton on adults and children's data, and also from Pixel on grant and council tax income, a real team effort to reach the best possible position to enable you to make decisions on the best of recommendations. And in the council meeting yesterday, there were a number of references to the consultant's report and to the consultant's recommendations. And I know you know this, but I thought it was really important just to highlight it and to be absolutely clear today, because you are now making the final decision upon this report with the knowledge of the discussions yesterday. So the report before you is the report of the Chief Executive, and it's based upon the professional advice of your county council officers. The consultants have played a really important role, but that role has been to support and advise your professional officers, and they have done that to a very high standard. So this is not a consultant's report, nor is it the consultant's recommendations. It is the recommendations and the considerations of your professional officers, who have been absolutely fantastic in working like Trojans to make sure that the best report and the best recommendations come to you for decision making. So I wanted to place on record my thanks to all of the officers that have been involved in this exercise and bringing forward such an exceptional piece of work, and for the consultants that have supported that work. But now I'm just going to hand over to Gary, who will properly introduce the report. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Karen. It's the challenge with speaking second, is you've covered an awful lot of what I was going to say. But I'll keep this brief, given both Karen's introduction and the extensive number of briefings. I hope members feel well supported and well briefed throughout the process, both members of the Cabinet, but we've really made a diligent and concerted effort to ensure that all 78 councillors have felt engaged throughout the LGR journey we've been on in particular over the last 2 or 3 weeks, and the dedicated time and briefing sessions that a range of officers across a number of professional functions have afforded to members to navigate what is a very complex and technically tricky area. But we've had a number of comments from members thanking us for the time and effort that officers have put into that. As Karen said, you've got before you an extensive set of papers which builds on the decision that you took earlier this year in March and sets out the evidence-based approach and evaluation of future options associated with local government reorganisation, both in accordance with the government's stated criteria, but also remembering the County Council agreed principles that again were agreed in March early this year. You'll also see within your packs a letter from the Chairman of the County Council formally setting out the outcome of yesterday's full council debate and resolution. So, Leader, I therefore refer you and Cabinet to the recommendations detailed in paragraphs 2 and 3 of the report and welcome any questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Gary. Colleagues, questions first. Jan.
Many thanks, Gary. I thought it was a very good debate we had yesterday, but it was an informed debate because of the time officers had spent the previous week and indeed this week going through the details of the report, because it's a very large report and it's complex. So I think members really appreciated that. As we move to public engagement, how will we distill the sort of messages within that report, particularly around the financial difficulties, if you like, of setting up a greenfield authority, which is probably the nub, is probably the most important question, but it's very hard, I would imagine, to distill that information in an easily digested format. So that's a bit of a tricky question, but I just wondered what your thoughts are on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Warwick. I think one of the things that we'll kind of appreciate is we're not going from a standing start in terms of that kind of public engagement. So it's something we've done pretty much since the ministerial announcement earlier this year. So there has been that regular education and taking both residents, stakeholders, partner organisations on that journey. That's involved a series of sort of resident engagement groups through our Hampshire Perspectives exercise that is detailed within your report. We've also taken a huge amount of time, sort of the effort levels that Carolyn referred to as both been on the technical work within the report, but as you can all imagine, ensuring that landscape of partners, we've really taken the time to invest in ensuring that our colleagues across the Blue Light Services, across education, our businesses, the list goes on, our parish and town councils are fully up to speed and educated around where we are. We've then been running a series of stakeholder briefing sessions and events this week, because we're at an important moment in time in terms of that latest publication of quite a lot of information. And those stakeholder events, which are both live events, but then recorded and put on our website and then promoted through our social media, and explaining, as we've tried to do to councillors this week, quite complex information, those key messages in quite a simple and succinct way. So we've built on that this week. And then, as you'll see within the papers and the recommendations, the next step is then that public engagement exercise over the summer. That will launch hopefully on Monday, subject to decisions today. And that will build on that simple, coherent narrative that we're trying to build in terms of ensuring that both there is that focus on the government's criteria in terms of the future responsibilities that we have in terms of meeting that, but also translating that in terms of what does it mean for the outcomes of the residents across Hampshire, and really ensuring we're framing it in that language.
Any other questions, everybody? No? All good? I think we all feel incredibly well briefed, Gary, by this. So if we move on into debate, I know that everybody wanted to say a few words, I think. So if I start this side and move around anti-clockwise, is that all right, Ros?
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Gary, for the report today. I think yesterday was a really interesting day, and listening to the comments from members with my Children's Services exec member hat on, it was really reassuring to hear the desire to make sure that our children that are within our service have no change, or there is no effect on that service going forward for them. And I think that was really important. That really kind of helped me with the decision that we're actually facing today with the recommendation put forward to us. There is no doubt in my mind that actually, and I recognise that the statutory children's services, that if it is too small, it does have the potential to lead to risk and to a lack of resilience against future fluctuations in demand, and that could potentially lead to a risk of a decline in performance, which is something that none of us want for our most vulnerable within that children's services area. We have been an outstanding authority for over a decade now, and that's something that, as the lead member, I am immensely proud of, and I know that my colleagues around the table are extremely proud of that fact too. And that's something that actually we will be able to take forward with us and build on that going forward with those other areas as well, to see what is good, to have those conversations to make sure that all children have the best level of service and care that we all can provide going forward. And I think the recommendations that we have in front of us today, I'm very, very happy to support. There was support for those within the chamber yesterday, and I think the key points about my area of responsibility were absolutely pulled out and will be supported and will be mindful and at the forefront of everyone's thoughts going forward. That's all I have to say on the matter today. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Leader. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be there yesterday, so my apologies for that. But I have caught up, both by being briefed and watching some of the streaming. So it was a late night last night. There was quite a lot of discussion around the points that Councillor Chadd has made, education and children's services, which is my real focus here. And it's notable that Hampshire County Council has a higher proportion of maintained schools than most other councils around the country, let alone the unitaries that are bordering us. What's notable from that is the outcomes from our children are exceptional, are outstanding. And a real focus has to be on maintaining that and looking at the outcomes and support of all our children, including those that are most vulnerable. We're leading on so many initiatives like our transformation programme, and it's interesting to see that government is now considering implementing some of the programmes nationwide that we're already delivering across Hampshire. I think that says we're doing a good job. Our children say we're doing a good job, and so do our parents, our families. And it's really focused on the outcomes once again. And supporting those with special education needs. We're building schools, building new schools, really fast. And we want to do that irrespective of what devolution and local government reorganisation brings us. But picking up on what Councillor Chadd said, that disaggregation is going to have a profound impact. And if we split into too many local authorities, local unitaries, we'll lose the benefit, we'll increase costs, and we won't see those outstanding exceptional services delivered going forward, or there'll be a gap, and that gap would be inexcusable. Demands for special education needs is rising. There are insufficient funds from government for much of what we want to do, and hopefully that will change. Despite that, we are doing a really good job, and I think the proposals that we've made for devolution and the B24 option is by far the strongest and best position that we can be in for our residents, for the 150,000 children that we have in school, for the 10,000 staff that are involved in education, and for our residents more generally. So I'm really keen to support this. I think it also gives us opportunities to improve on financial support and the sold services we deliver, which is a core focus for us. So actually, we're delivering even better services and delivering those more widely. I therefore support what's put forward. Thank you.
Thanks. Liz.
Thank you, Chairman. When this first came up, I have to declare that I'm not in favour of LGR, but we are where we are. Devolution, yes, devolution has been an aim for many years of this council because it will benefit us. LGR was sort of an add-on by the government, and in many ways, I would say let's have a unitary Hampshire. Let's keep our excellent services together. Let's keep social services and children's services and highways working as they do now. that's not part of the government's programme and we can't do it. So my next concern following on from that was not to have new adult services, new children's services set up, because the risk to the most vulnerable in our society is such that I would be really worried about day one when they stop being part of our responsibility, but were handed over to another authority who had no experience, had no background, no training in how to deal with it. So I'm pleased that we've come up with an option where we have 3 anchor institutions who already have their own social services, their own children's services, and hopefully will be able to take over from day one, just expand their services, because they'll have that history. And hopefully we'll be working closely with them to ensure that people are still protected and looked after. And there, for me, it has to be B2, where we have 3 unitaries on the mainland. To have 4, I think, would be an absolute disaster, not just financially, but also in terms of risk to people and children. Thank you.
Thanks. Russell.
Thank you, Leader. I've got 3 points I'd like to make, please. So firstly, I think this has been an excellent process that Hampshire County Council has run internally, and I'd like to thank Carolyn and Gary for their leadership and all of the officer team, because it has been diligent and professional and serious, and this is a serious issue. We have had an open mind, and I'm delighted to have the opportunity to refute the suggestion that was made yesterday that we somehow knew what we wanted to do and then fit the evidence to show that. That's just not what happened. Right from the beginning, we have followed the data where it has led us, and I'm actually quite surprised by where it's led us. I did not predict that we would come to this point, but we looked at the data very carefully, we thought about all of the issues, and we ended up, I think, with a good solution. I think we were right in recent weeks to focus on getting the right urban-rural mix for the proposed new unitaries. We know that the countryside is crucial to people's mental and physical health. Having the right urban-rural mix for the new unitaries, I think, is very important. Keeping the national parks together is also a huge benefit, and our proposal does that. And I started by saying that we had an open mind. We still have an open mind. We now go into a consultation process, and people will continue to make points that we will consider. This is not the end of the process. We have a long summer ahead of us to think about the optimal solution. So that's my first point. The second thing I want to say on the finances is that people who want a different solution, such as 4 mainland unitaries, need to think very hard about the risks of Hampshire not being able to finance it and getting into a situation where we can't meet our statutory obligations. And vulnerable people are at risk, as my colleagues have said. I like to think that we all live in a country where the government would not allow vulnerable people to suffer, and that if Hampshire did get into serious difficulties, there'd be emergency funding. But I'm not certain about that. I have a 95% confidence about that, and I'm not keen to take that risk, frankly, because it could lead to serious suffering of people who need care and support. There is something I'm 100% confident of, though, which is the government would sit back and allow Hampshire to get into a Section 114 situation, which would cause huge reputational damage and deter business investment. They would allow rubbish to pile up on the streets, 10%, 15% rise in council tax that would push many households into debt and poverty, museums close, libraries close, household waste and recycling centres close. And the reason I'm 100% confident that the government would sit back and let that happen is we've seen it in other parts of the country. I don't want any of those outcomes for our residents. I think it would make Hampshire a worse place to live and in turn put pressure on services for vulnerable people. So we have to do the sensible thing, given that there's a crisis in local government funding, and come up with a solution that gives Hampshire the best chance of getting onto a sustainable footing for the long term. And then thirdly, there was talk yesterday about the opportunity for shared services. And I do feel that some of the comments got the cart before the horse. What we're doing now is talking about statutory responsibilities, political accountability. There is still plenty of opportunity to think about designing services in a way that's best for Hampshire as a whole, but that will come next year. We already jointly commission services between councils, and we've done that for many years. That may happen in the future, but that is something that we can't really predict until we get to the transition planning phase. But I'm pretty confident that when we do get to that phase, there'll be a transition board and there will be a willingness to innovate when we redesign services. Officers here have been redesigning services for the last 10 years. So there's a lot of experience when it comes to thinking out the box and taking opportunities. I think there's a great opportunity to get our universities involved and use AI. We'll have a mayor and a strategic authority, which will hopefully bring vision to that transition planning process. That's something for next year. And what I really hope is that once we've got the local government reform plan agreed with the government early next year, hopefully, all districts and boroughs will come together and we'll have a spirit of optimism to design services in a way that's really going to work, and particularly on health, because the leader of the opposition talked about health yesterday. There is a great opportunity for us to work with the NHS to create these new neighbourhood health centres that we've seen in the 10-year plan and make them properly integrated, where we have social care and health professionals working together in communities, helping people to get healthy, helping people to lead independent lives in their own homes. And that's something that I think I'm feeling positive and optimistic about when we come to that transition planning phase. But that, as I say, is something for next year, not for now. Right now, we're focusing on statutory responsibilities and political accountability, and I think our solution is the best one.
Thanks. Zoe.
Thank you, Leader. This is a pivotal moment and one that will shape our communities for generations to come. And as we heard from Liz, the final decision on local government reorganisation does rest with the government. I firmly do believe that we must step forward and engage in this process. The choices we make will possibly define local government for the next 50 years. Yesterday, we heard from the inspiring words from Gabriel, a remarkable ambassador of our youth, who addressed the council for our reflections with poise and insight. Let us extend firstly our thanks to Gabriel, but their voice reminds us that local democracy is not just for today, but it is for the future, and ensuring that our young people inherit a system that is strong, vibrant and resilient and truly representative. Reorganisation, local government is complex and multi-layered. We talked about the complexity and the length of the report and the work that's gone in it and the data that needs to be analysed. With the power of transformation, not only is about services that we deliver, but how communities are heard and empowered. We may seek efficiencies and effectiveness, but our true goal must always be the well-being and the needs of our resident and the empowerment of neighbourhoods. Remember, neighbourhoods are not just defined by lines on maps. They are rooted in relationships, unity and shared sense of belonging. And we heard some of that in the debate yesterday when members were talking about their local communities, their roads, their next door neighbours. In the debate, we also heard, and what rang really clear, was that residents want to know that their services, such in education, care, infrastructure, jobs, and the environment will remain, will improve, and will endure for the future and long term. Yet we must also not overlook the challenges ahead, and we also heard that yesterday. There are hurdles, there is apprehension, and I acknowledge these concerns. Change of this scale will always bring uncertainty, and I too have reservations in its speed and complexity, and it necessarily was something that we didn't foresee when we talked about devolution over the previous years. But we are where we are, and again we heard that from Liz. We have a duty to ensure that our approach is transparent, that we truly listen and we work together to tackle those concerns, such as loss of local identity, which came through very strong yesterday. We must never allow residents to feel disconnected from decisions that shape their lives and their future. We must also look at the uncertain outcomes. We must be honest in the journey ahead, be realistic about the benefits of reorganisation. They may take time and new challenges may become apparent as we go through it and they may emerge. We must be prepared, adaptable and resilient. Let's also recognise, and we've also heard yesterday, that it's not the magic wand with the financial challenges. The pressures on adult and child social care send school transport will persist, we know that. We must continue to drive reform, transformation and innovation in these vital services here at Hampshire, where we continue on this journey as transformation is not just reinventing, but laying those foundations of best practice. And I truly do believe that we do that here in Hampshire, and we will continue to do that and lobby government in the reform and financial settlements within those areas. What reassures me is the thoroughness and integrity of our process. The analysis, both quantitative and qualitative, undertaken by our officers has been rigorous, balanced and enlightening. I offer my sincere thanks to them and our consultants for their dedication and their expertise. Their work has been considered not just numbers, but people, that balanced analysis. Our decision must also be balanced with the evidence we have before us. We must weigh every option, anticipate every consequence, and remember that our responsibility is to every resident, both now and in the future. And the report lays those foundations. As voiced yesterday by our fellow members, we owe it to our communities to offer a thoughtful, robust proposal shaped by genuine engagement and public consultation, which will commence, as you said, on Monday. So similar to what Russell said, we are laying those foundations. We have started those discussions and what we put forward as our proposal today. And I look forward of how that's going to be shaped over the summer. And when we come back in September is again have this a very rigorous debate. So thank you, Leader.
Thanks, Zoe. Lulu.
Thank you, Leader. Gosh, as we go around the table, it's getting more pressure as to, how to word this. Given much thought, I think we've spent so many months, as Russell has said, we've kept the open mind. We've worked together really strongly, as peacefully as we can, always. And everybody has different ideas, but I think we've come together for today to make this decision, and it's really positive. However, Liz, I do agree with you. While it's a momentous day, and I do believe devolution makes good sense, I would love it, LGR not to necessarily be going ahead, but we are where we are, and we've made this decision, and I think we've made the best choice. But it is a strange thing when you are voting for a new plan for a new type of government in those circumstances. So, what we deliver here at HCC, as we know, in adult social care, children's services, highways, is exemplary. As Stuart Ashley has said, it's a culture, and I've held on to those thoughts. Outstanding, despite being the difficult background of no increase in government funding, despite a spending review and regular correspondence from Nick for essential additional finance. We've been told that the cost of implementation will be hours from the savings that we make, but this reform in itself doesn't fix the funding for social care for adults services or children's, or the demand for the SEND provision in the future. And looking to the future, I know how important ensuring these services continuing to the same high standard is at the heart of everything that we've been working on and what we want to maintain. And councillors and the officers will continue to always have these essential services for our most vulnerable residents in our minds when we're planning, analysing data and making these tough decisions about local government reform. From a highways perspective and passenger transport, I hope that the innovative work continues across Hampshire and the Solent area, and integrated transport continues to be developed. We already work with Southampton and Portsmouth in the Enhanced Partnership and other organisations. We have Transport for the South East on a much bigger scale as well. So we are working on improving these types of services. But we are in uncharted territory, and we are resolute in our determination to get it right for the 1.4 million residents of Hampshire, and being mindful of the distinct characteristics of the different parts of the county, and the importance of community identity and collective history of the area. And Russell, you said it, getting the balance right for urban and rural has been absolutely crucial. Yesterday, I think many of our fellow residents voiced their support for the proposal of B24 and praised the detailed work of PwC, Newton and Pixel, which has given us the detailed analysis and underpinning evidence for our decision today. Kim Taylor, Councillor Taylor in particular, said the tools of analysis are sound and don't expect perfection on day one. And as Gary has pointed out to us, the biggest risks are in the transition period where services are transferred to these new authorities. We follow the criteria given to us by central government, and working closely with our colleagues in East Hants District Council has given us the alternative perspective of a district council and the services they deliver, so how we can plan to build on these existing structures and use the unitaries as the pivotal building point for developing services. And a testimony to our recent work on devolution, of course, was the response from Minister McMahon yesterday to confirm that we, with the other 5 authorities, have passed the statutory test to proceed to the mayor election next May. So that was good news and a great reward. Regarding the division of Hampshire, the geography of the 3 proposed unitaries and the distance that representatives of some areas may have to travel came up quite a bit yesterday, I thought, in the council meeting. Councillor Parker-Jones pointed out that many of us already travel across the county and make decisions for residents outside the areas we represent to ensure the services are delivered effectively. But I do think that neighbourhood empowerment is absolutely crucial. And I'm glad that Councillor Warwick asked that question first this morning, because it was one that I was going to ask as well. We must get that right and take this communication out more to our residents. The best for me yesterday, talking of our colleagues, was the very human story composed by, and I'm sure you know what I'm going to say, Councillor Thierry. What a showstopper that was. It was brilliant. About a certain Mrs. Thierry and how the changes might affect her or not, and how he was able to reassure her about an essential element of what is being proposed, continuity of services, and no noticeable change because he had faith that our plans and analysis are sound, and I thought that really brought it to life. So I'm happy to support the recommendations for the unitary authorities for Hampshire and the Solent, the B24, and I'm pleased to see that further engagement with the key stakeholders, residents and members will take place to find out local views before the 26th of September this year. My thanks to the officers who've worked so hard and for their invaluable professional testimonials as well on each of their areas of work, and my thanks to East Hants District Council and Councillor Millard as leader, working closely with Nick, our leader. So, in words of Russell's, let's develop that spirit of optimism and move forward. Thank you.
Kirsty.
I hope that wasn't too long.
There are no time limits here, luckily. So.
Thank you, Leader. Like my colleagues have said, and as the Labour members eloquently pointed out yesterday, it is their government who will decide. What worries me is it isn't clear what the true motivations are for this wholesale change to how local government has run and operated for many years, as it wasn't in their manifesto. Will Rachel Reeves be looking to amalgamate to remove government grant from the sector? Or will they truly focus on service delivery and the improvement of pairing up services like housing with children's and adult social services and closer working with the NHS and health services at a local level, as Councillor Oppenheimer has already discussed today? That remains to be seen, but the strong endorsement from our council to proceed with the officer's recommendation yesterday was reassuring, and the next phase of engagement to ensure we hear from residents across the county, including our service users and town and parish councils, will hopefully begin to get a sense of how the people of Hampshire view this preferred option and the future of local government in Hampshire. We know in universal services people value their roads and the timely maintenance of them, that their bins are collected, and we have an important but less visible role in that process, and to be able to enjoy the outdoors, whether using the footpath network close to them or visiting one of our Green Flag Award-winning country parks. Whatever the government ultimately decide, I know that what will matter is how we deliver locally and the ability to provide services that our public value.
Jan.
Thank you so much. And I think we all agree that Mrs. Thierry definitely stole the show yesterday, but actually every member, regardless of political party, spoke from the heart, and everybody put their residents first and their locality first. And I think there's a huge strength in that argument. So Hampshire, as we know, is very big, but we all represent our particular area, and we've never had any difficulty whether we're discussing the New Forest or Aldershot. So I think that's a really important precedent to keep in mind. I think to do this, the financial situation is the most important aspect, and we must be objective about that and not subjective. And I think it's very easy to be subjective and to talk about locality and ask for more time. And I think that's not an offer we have at the moment. We've got a fairly rapid trajectory given to us by government, and that's fine. We're about to go to public engagement, and I think we've got a very good story to tell. And we're not out of kilter, so you may have noticed yesterday Essex published its proposals. Very similar county to ours, and very similar proposals dividing Essex into three based along three anchor cities, much as we've done. And they will be developing their business case along very similar lines. Two things that really stand out for me and I respect is the support from our colleagues at East Hampshire, who not only voted along similar lines yesterday, but they attended our member briefing sessions. So that was very important for us to have that district perspective. And then the third star award goes to Nick Adams-King, who has quietly been running a roadshow across the whole county. And actually that public engagement has gone slightly under the radar, but has been so important because those briefings have been open to members of the public, and I guess you've fielded some tricky questions. But actually that's been so important, and long may that continue if you're up to continuing that. So thank you to you.
There are loads more dates in the diary. The tour continues. Select committee colleagues, would you like to add anything to the commentary so far? Juliet?
I'd just like to say it was a really good debate, and I don't feel I can add much more, but I think it would be a dereliction of duty not to choose what we believe is the most resilient option. And I think Councillor Chad raises a very good point about the fragmentation of children's services, choosing a model that doesn't over-fragment. So that's one of the things I would say. The other thing I would really highlight, I think Gary summed it up, that the transition will be the risk, won't it? And that will be tricky. But also to encourage residents really to take part in the engagement. We really want to hear from them. Yeah. Can I just make a point? There was a term used called neighbourhood convener, which I wasn't sure about. I felt like I was running a branch of the WI, but I did find the officer briefing hugely helpful, and I particularly liked all the financial analysis. So a huge thank you to you all. I found Tuesday actually just very reassuring in terms of depth to which we've gone in making what we believe is the right decision. Thank you, everyone.
Bill?
Thank you, Leader. I think I must join in with everybody here today to say what an outstanding work has been done by our officers and also the officers of EDH and the work with their councillors there. I think that has been critical in getting that message across this week. And I think your leader, Rose, shows, as Jan has said, and I think your summary yesterday at the end of the debate for the recommendations was outstanding. It brought together those people who thought that they might abstain actually on side. I thought that was first class. The thing I've learnt in life is that, like the time management course I did back in the 80s, is that 6/8 preparation and 6/8 preparation and 2/8 execution does lead to success and not the other way around. And I think everything that's been done this week, the officers talked to us on Tuesday, not Wednesday, as some of the councillors said yesterday, was very important. I think also what the directors are doing with the stakeholders, the NHS, you know, the what's happening there with the ICBs being reduced from 42 down to 26. The other services is so important in how we move forward to ensure that our adult social care services, children's services are all speaking together, and that came out quite clearly this week, which is most important. Culture, I think, is what Andy was talking about on Tuesday. That is another very important point. And the neighbourhood aspect, I think I'm concerned about. I thought Councillor Taylor was outstanding yesterday in speaking, and it just demonstrates how some of the working groups in our county council do actually work together and actually think alike. Change is a funny one. My corps actually became part of 5 corps amalgamated, and 5 years on, none of the young officers or soldiers ever knew anything about the previous corps. And that point came out, I think, again yesterday. In 5 years' time, although we may be going through some difficult changes, there will be young adults leaving college and university who know nothing about the past and are only too concerned about the future. And I think as long as we keep that in mind, it will help us go through the fragmentation and changes that we're looking forward to in the next couple of years. So I do see the, and thank all those being involved in the preparation for the next 2 years. Thank you.
Thanks. Rod?
Thank you. I'd like to say from the outset that none of us would have chosen LGR, not one of us. What has come through in the last few weeks is that before us we have probably the best option. I think for me this was put into perspective yesterday by Michael Tierney and Mrs. Tierney, and made me realise that really our services, our excellent services, are not going to change. Picking up from what Russell was mentioned earlier about rural and urban mix, and I agree, the option before us is the best option for the rural and urban mix. And I think it's beholden on all of us, all members, during the summer break to encourage our residents to engage in the consultation feedback and hear what they've got to say. And when we reconvene in September, to listen to what they've got to say and to, if necessary, tweak our plan accordingly. The one thing that I'd like to finish on in saying is that ultimately, though, we must remember that this is not necessarily within our control. The final decision is going to be made by central government. Thank you.
So thanks very much, Rod. And thanks to all of you for your contributions. So let me sum up briefly as well. And I think it's been really interesting to see how the plans for local government reorganisation are proceeding elsewhere in the country. And yesterday proposals were put forward by both Essex and by Sussex for their new councils. And I think we here have been unique, and we are unique quite often in being extraordinarily transparent and honest about the journeys that we take to different decision points. In doing so, we open ourselves up to scrutiny and we open ourselves up to criticism, and that's understandable, and it's actually a strength of what we do, because in doing that we are able to test whether the route that we are taking is the correct one, and that the principles and the evidence upon which it's based are also strong and correct. And as many of you have said, if we're completely honest about this, we wouldn't wish to be here. And we wouldn't wish to be in a position where we were having to reorganise local government. And in fact, many of the outcomes that we are hoping this will bring could be achieved through better working between the districts and boroughs and the unitary councils and ourselves. And the real prize in this entire journey has been devolution. We're about to talk about that in a couple of minutes' time. We have, in that process of being transparent, been extraordinary, I think, and I think the officers have been extraordinary in providing a fantastic detail and briefings. We have held 4 different briefings, 2 of them in person, 1 of them lasting an entire day, so that every member of East Hampshire District Council and every member of the County Council had the opportunity to see and every different aspect of the route to this decision, to understand every different facet of that, and to understand how that would impact upon them, the communities they represent, and the people we serve. So it became clear a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago, that whilst it would have been ideal if we had all of us been on the same journey in Hampshire in terms of the 15 different councils, that wasn't going to be possible because of the sense from some of our colleagues that they wanted to ensure that place led their choice of future. And deciding that they wanted to have a certain number of councils and would then begin to look at the different options that might be available within that was entirely up to them and is an entirely valid route to take. We, however, both I personally and also all of you I know in the conversations that we've had that have spanned quite some time now, have been very clear that we wanted to be evidence-led. We wanted to understand what those different options were. We wanted to be curious about the outcome that might bring. And so in doing so, we have looked at different options of geographies, we've looked at different options of working, and we have, in a very rigorous way, gone through the data to come to this position, thanks to hours and hours of work by all of our officers and the leadership of Carolyn and Andy and Gary. When we talked yesterday about size, there was concern about the fact that one of the councils at least would be currently in the position of 3rd largest in the country. Well, some of the proposals brought forward by Sussex and Essex yesterday would immediately relegate that down to 6th or 7th place. And that's the changing nature of local government. And the government have been very clear that they expect councils to merge, they expect areas to become larger because they see that as the way by which savings can be made to the local government budget. And I'll come back to that point in a minute because that thereby equally lies the challenge. Similarly, we talked about shared services, and it's absolutely right that we should begin to explore that journey. But remember, whatever councils you create must have their own statutory responsibilities. They must have their own fiscal and budgetary independence. And if they agree to buy services from other councils, as perhaps most pertinently our colleagues from East Hampshire understand in some of their previous relationships, they lose the ability to control their own budget. And that becomes really tricky. And there are so many different examples of how that has not worked out well for other local government organisations across the country. So whilst we need to absolutely commit to looking at ways by which we can ensure efficiency, ensure parity of service, parity of terms and conditions for our staff, security and resilience through working together as existing councils and new ones, we equally need to be clear that statutory responsibilities still lie with each of those sovereign organisations, no matter how many are created, no matter what geographies they cover, and similarly they will be responsible for their own budgets. Neighbourhood empowerment is a really interesting issue, and I think there is a real vulnerability around the way the government are talking at the moment that seems to dismiss the involvement of town and parish councils. We know that at least in 2 of the 4 districts of Hampshire that are not currently parish, there are moves to create parishes now. And I was pleased when, at the very beginning of this process, Jim McMahon talked about the importance and engagement of parish councils. And now, as Juliet's pointed out, he's moved away to this idea of neighbourhood empowerment and councillors as conveners, which I'd have said union officials, you said Women's Institute. The two things may be similar, I don't know. The way my mother ran the Women's Institute, it was more like a military organisation, but that's different. That process essentially means that the new unitary councillors will be expected to bring together the people in whatever neighbourhood area is created, which may be just their own ward or a number of wards put together, to be able to perhaps manage budgets for that area, perhaps organise more joined up services, whatever might be important to their communities. And articulating that and understanding how that might work as a principle is a really important piece of work that we need to undertake, I think, in coming to the point of being able to articulate how that looks for the government in our vision when we submit in September. But that cannot leave out parish and town councils. And it must include them in terms of understanding that they equally are independent organisations. They are equally elected, and they have as much validity in that process of putting forward their residents' views as the new councillors will be. And there was some suggestion yesterday from some of our colleagues that we should somehow disengage, that we as a county should just leave it to the local areas to decide how they wanted to work together. And there's been a little bit of discomfort around that in terms of people wanting to, it's been a bit like the schoolyard, people wanting to work with their mates and not worry about those elsewhere. And that was really apparent in a couple of the contributions where there was only a focus upon the area that particular organisations wanted to look at. And the government have been really clear, whatever proposals are put forward need to cover the entirety of Hampshire and the Solent. They need to cover the entirety of the area. So if you're particularly worried about your own area, you still need to think about what the others look like. And it is our responsibility, and indeed it's our duty, to engage with this process. It's our responsibility and duty to look after the people who are most vulnerable that we serve. And it is our responsibility and duty to make sure that we look after the finances of the council taxpayers who fund our services, and who should rightly expect us to ensure that we do not expose them to additional risk of even greater council tax increases as a consequence of the decisions we make. So that comes to the three pillars of sustainability and resilience, so financial sustainability and resilience, quality and locality. And quality was perfectly described by Mrs. Thierry, in terms of Michael's contribution yesterday. And the thing that worries me most about all of this is that in the ability to deliver that, there is no offer of funding from government for the cost of change. And the cost of change will be high, and it will come at a time when our finances are most particularly stretched. And the consequence of that actually means that we need to look even more carefully at the quality and sustainability piece. So it can't just be about place, it has to be about those different services as well. It's been disappointing, I think, to see that this has been presented in a way as a binary choice. It's either our way or somebody else's. It's not. I welcome a plurality of views, and ultimately there could be as many as 15 different submissions made to government on the 26th of September, and then it's up to them. It's their choice. They started this journey. They chose to undertake it. They didn't have a democratic mandate. It wasn't in their manifesto to make us do this. But we now, as everybody has said, are where we are, and we need to engage with the process. And that engagement also needs to run to everybody in Hampshire to let us know what they think. There's still a week left of the consultation that that's been carried out by the unitaries and some of the districts and boroughs. And I'd really encourage people to get involved in that and look at the different options that they are putting forward. And similarly, to engage with our consultation process, an engagement that starts on Monday. In conclusion, I think how I would sum up would be to say that this model is grounded in rigorous analysis and aims to protect vital services, particularly for our most vulnerable residents, while delivering long-term savings and stability. But it's important to acknowledge that it's not the only vision. Other councils have expressed concerns about scale and identity and democratic accountability. Some fear that larger authorities may feel more remote or disconnected from the communities they serve. And this is where I want to be clear. There is no single right answer. Each proposal has merit. Each reflects a different emphasis, whether on place or efficiency or local voice. What matters most is that we approach this process with openness, respect, and a shared commitment to do what's best for our residents. I've said before, and I'll say again, this is not about winning an argument. It's about shaping a future that works. That means listening to feedback, engaging with communities, and ensuring that any new structure is built on solid foundations, financially, operationally, and democratically. After all, it is the government who decide the outcome, not us. As we continue this journey, I would encourage everyone to take part in our engagement that will run through the end of this month and into August. We will listen to you, and we will adjust our thoughts accordingly. And we will bring all of these proposals back to another round of engagement with our members, another round of debate in council in September before we finally make a decision here on our submission to government on the 26th of September. The reorganisation conversation, in a way, asks us about who we want to be. And so let's think about the past. Let's think about who we have been, but let's also think about who we want to be, how we want to be remembered by our children, our grandchildren as we go forward, because what we're creating will be something that will serve them, not just us. And so final thanks. Thanks to our officers who have done such a fantastic job. My thanks to the officers in East Hampshire who have equally supported us with their views, and that's been absolutely vital to our process. And also to Richard Millard, who a couple of our colleagues have mentioned, who has been robust and brave and honest in following his and his colleagues' view that the evidence must lead them to the right decision as well. And we've worked incredibly well together. I'm proud of the work that we've all done. I look forward to the outcomes of the other proposals as well. There is no wrong answer. There is no right answer. And we are not here to have an argument. We're just putting forward the best case that we have. So I'm very happy to support these proposals as well. I guess we should just vote. All those in favour?
Agreed.
Agreed. So Gary, Carolyn, Andy, thank you so much. I'm jolly glad there are no time limits on our speeches. So now we move on to the seventh item on the agenda and our final piece, which hopefully is a little bit quicker. English devolution white paper again. Devolution update, Gary.
Thank you, Leader. And as you said, probably a more straightforward one, given the nature of the paper. But again, this paper was discussed at full council yesterday, including reference to information that was breaking in the meeting that has been forthcoming since the publication of papers. And that was with reference to the government's positive announcement yesterday that the MHCLG consultation has now concluded. And the Minister was able to confirm that those key legal tests to now proceed with the formation of our combined authority for our area across Hampshire and the Solent have been met. This also follows last week's announcement, again, which didn't quite make it into the deadline for the papers, around the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill, going through Parliament last week as well, which sets out a bit more detail in terms of those powers and responsibilities that are in front of us. So the paper before you today, Leader and Cabinet, sets out the significant progress we are making, working really, really collaboratively and closely in partnership, not just with our neighbouring constituent authorities, but that wider stakeholder landscape as well. The next steps that you'll all be expected to see over the next 6 to 9 months and the timeline associated with that, and how we're jointly structuring that programme that I've referred to, working very collaboratively with those partner organisations. So Leader and Cabinet refer you to recommendations detailed in paragraphs 2 to 5 of the report and welcome any questions.
Thanks very much, Gary. So questions from anybody? Jan?
Gary, I don't know if you know the answer to this. There's a recommendation around the mayoral capacity funding, which presumably comes from government. Is there likely to be a transfer of funding from Hampshire County Council to the mayoral office to go with certain responsibilities and the change of those responsibilities?
Thank you, Councillor Warwick. So I think there's two parts to that question. So the first is around the money that is required to establish a new combined authority. Our expectation, that the Minister hasn't necessarily confirmed in writing the financial values of that, but has confirmed in writing government's commitment to ensure that through capacity funding, government is funding the establishment of the new combined authorities. And that's quite a big undertaking and exercise, as you can imagine. We're establishing a new organisation out of nothing that's not been there. And that requires a certain amount of work and undertaking across the 4 constituent authorities. Although those authorities, which Hampshire is one, may need to provide some cash flow for that, the working assumption is that that is all recovered and badged to both government and that future combined authority. The bit that's more difficult to answer is then in terms of the future responsibilities and powers and money that may at this moment in time be channeled through Hampshire County Council as a responsible upper-tier in the area. That may in future channel and make its way to either Hampshire County Council or other organisations through the mayoral combined authority. It's too early to say at that stage in terms of how that will work specifically, and that's precisely the programme of work ahead of us over the next 6 to 9 months.
Thanks. Any other questions, everybody? No? Any debate? We debated it a fair bit yesterday. Select committee chairs, all good. So I think a couple of things to say. What was really heartening yesterday was that in council this part of the agenda was passed unanimously by everybody, and everyone I think sees the absolute benefit to us of this. There's quite a bit of work now ahead of us. We have a draft statutory instrument that which begins to tell us how government want us to establish the arrangements with them. We then also have to help them create that will help guide, and we will then work with the government to create the legislation that will establish this mayoral combined authority or county combined authority as the autumn progresses. So a fair bit of work now to be done. It's fantastic that we got through the gateway. This is devolution attempt number 8. And we are finally there. And we're finally there on Caroline's last day, which is, I think, is testament to us all. But also, my thanks go to Phil Jordan, who's the leader of the Isle of Wight, and Steve, the leader of Portsmouth, and Lorna Fielker, who stood down on Wednesday as leader in Southampton. Without their patience and goodwill and hard work and determination, really since June of last year, before we started on a journey where we didn't think this would be quite the outcome in terms of how we would establish the combined authority and the mayoralty and the devolution deal. But actually that kind of changed along the way, but we were able to adapt and we were able to create something that worked really well in terms of getting on to the priority programme for this. And so it's been their good humour and patience and hard work that has taken us to this point. So my thanks to them and to their chief executives and their teams as well as our own. Within this, within the recommendations that we have in front of us, you'll have noted yesterday, and you'll have and I'd just like to repeat today, there are various delegations agreed where the leader and chief executive can make decisions if there is no time to hold a cabinet. I made this commitment to council, and I make it again now, that I don't foresee a situation where we couldn't call a cabinet at least very quickly so people could come and have their say. But more importantly, for what I think are going to be quite substantial issues, it would be my intention absolutely to obtain the view of full council as well before we went to that cabinet decision, because I think there are still some profound changes involved in this, and it would be right for us to sense check with our colleagues to make sure that they were in agreement if the deal is turning out to be quite different to that which we were anticipating it might look. So the recommendations are on page 375 from paragraphs 2 to 5. I'm happy to propose those and support them. All those in favour? Yeah. Okay. We're all agreed. Thanks so much. That's the end of the meeting.